Is Mario Kart World worth the $80 price tag? That's the question I asked myself upon picking up the Switch 2 and this newest kart racer. Normally, I don't overly concern myself with the price of games, but an exception seemed necessary here given that this cost represents a price hike that many other games of the future will copy. It's a bad beat for video game consumption moving forward, as many publishers will be quick to follow suit. Raising prices is never going to be viewed positively by customers, but the backlash can be mitigated if the increase in price is justified through additional content. And that pressure is felt exponentially with Mario Kart World since it seeks to be the new trendsetter, resetting the expected price of the average video game. So, to be very clear, that's the concept this review functions around. Does Mario Kart World offer up enough new content to justify the extra cost compared to Mario Kart 8? And in short, no it doesn't. Now, a large reason for that response is another caveat I'm putting on my review, and that would be that this is an examination of only the title's single-player offerings. Multiplayer is obviously a huge component of Mario Kart, whether it be played locally with your friends or at a party, or online against strangers. The countless hours and experiences that multiplayer affords will be enough to justify the price hike for some. It's not hard to see how people can and will, quote-unquote, get their money out of it if they play multiplayer, and so I don't want that strength to go understated. Divorcing that part away from this examination when it plays such a large role may seem wrong. Like, of course it's not worth $80 if you're not going to play online. That's what you might be thinking. However, my counterpoint to that is that the previous Mario Kart also offered a great online experience at launch for only $60. It also wasn't locked behind a newly released console paywall like Mario Kart World is. So if the fun derived from multiplayer is on equal footing, what is it about the single player that justifies the $20 mark up from the previous game, or the $10 price hike from the previous standard of game prices? The answer appears to be Knockout Tour and Free Roam, two brand new modes that are featured prominently. However, a closer examination reveals cracks in the armor that shows that Nintendo didn't quite stick the landing. The open world premise is not taken far enough, tracks are not featured enough, and a lack of difficulty options neuters some game modes. I'll be talking more about those in depth as we move throughout this review, breaking down each game mode. However, before we do that, I want to focus on the driving mechanics themselves, highlighting the strengths and weaknesses as I see it. So with all of that established, let's jump in to this full review. Believe it or not, Mario Kart World is the first Mario Kart game that I've ever owned. I've played a very small amount of 8 over the years, but never enough to truly get a grip on it mechanically. One thing has been clear though through investigating online. Mario Kart 8 really nailed its driving mechanics, establishing an incredible to control set of driving maneuvers that afforded its players great opportunity for skill expression and mastery through repeated practice. The question with Mario Kart World then became, how do they improve it? Many speculated that they wouldn't and would simply lean on the promise of an open world and other new game modes to move the series laterally, offering up a fresh take that didn't bother much with tweaking the controls. Well, you'd be surprised because they've implemented a handful of new features that allow for greater skill expression for those capable. I felt it was important to mention this first because new mechanics like wall riding, rail riding, and charged jumps, as well as smart steering for newbies, changes up the gameplay as well as the possibilities when designing new courses for the better. The basic and intermediate driving mechanics of accelerating and drifting remain intact and are as useful as ever, more than enough to win most races in single-player offerings. The way items can randomly influence the outcome of any race also remains intact, offering up a check and balance system so that new players won't always get obliterated by veterans, while also ensuring that computer AI racers can still somewhat go toe-to-toe with you. And if you're brand new like I was, smart steering can help prevent you from going off the rails, gently guiding you back on the track so that you don't lose speed. And that was a huge addition for me at first as a relative newcomer to the series, as I found my footing. However, for those who want to push themselves further, Nintendo has cooked tremendously here. The key to any good kart racer is having a low barrier to entry so that anyone can pick up and play, but also including more obscure techniques that great players can take advantage of to push their skills to the limits. In other words, low skill floor, but high skill ceiling. Mario Kart World absolutely nails these two extremes mechanically with the new additions. On the tail end of that is the high skill ceiling players, who can now utilize wall rides, rail rides, and charge jumps to constantly boost their speed. Another critical component of any kart racer is allowing your players to go really fast, while also challenging them to not lose that speed through twists, turns, and obstacles in the course. These new additions allow players to do just that. By holding down the R or ZR button while driving in a straight line, the player can charge up their kart and jump forward, left, or right after letting go of the button. The trick is making sure you're going straight, as turning slightly will begin a drift instead of a charge jump. But if you do it correctly, you'll get one of those charge jumps, allowing the player to get a small boost if they jump forward, or to land on walls and rails if they jump left or right. It sounds simple enough, and on straightaways in the open world, it is, but pulling this off in courses as they twist and turn is extremely challenging in some situations. However, if you pull it off successfully, you'll often be rewarded with more speed as your drift meter will build up while wall or rail riding, allowing you to get those extra mini boosts. It creates a very satisfying risk versus reward pattern, as you're constantly deciding to either play it safe and follow the natural layout of the course, or to take a risk in the hopes of attaining more speed. The result is a set of new mechanics that does take a lot of practice to get the hang of, but greatly rewards the best players by allowing them to pull off sick-looking moves while also granting them more speed. It's brilliant and ultra satisfying to pull off. Not that I did it that often, but it's still easy for me to appreciate how this lifts up the skill ceiling for many players. I can't say for certain, but I have to imagine that many veterans of the series will come to love these new mechanics, as it allows them to push their talents even further. My only complaint with these new mechanics is that they aren't ever taught directly to you. As a new player, I already was trying to come to grips with all the basics, which didn't take long, but it took hours of playing until I realized that some of these tricks were even possible. Sure, there is an explanation buried deep in the main menu, but reading a text box and being given a real opportunity to practice live where it's set up and structured for you are two different things. Free roam, as we will come to see, is a good way to practice these techniques, but if you don't know they exist, what are you supposed to do? It may seem like an odd complaint given the popularity of the series, but I really do believe this game could benefit from some optional tutorial levels that directly go over all the maneuvers. The players could all be informed then, while still having the option to pursue the advanced techniques or not. Finally, the last new implementation I wanted to mention is the rewind feature. This allows you to go backwards in time for a few seconds to correct any mistakes, but it doesn't affect other drivers, which means it can't be abused too often. Honestly, as interesting as this inclusion seemed during the pre-release marketing, its utility was very minimal to me. In fact, not once while playing have I ever felt the desire to use the rewind, even after I made a mistake. In the heat of the moment, it's difficult to remember the feature even exists. At the same time, since it doesn't rewind other drivers, including computer-controlled ones, it doesn't really make sense to use. Like, sure, you can rewind to maybe avoid some lava or something, but the other racers don't stop. So the amount of time you save by rewinding versus taking the penalty seems negligible at best. The rewind feature ended up being so forgettable that I nearly forgot to include it in this review. Luckily though, it's the only real miss of the new driving mechanics. The brilliant part of Mario Kart World's new gameplay mechanics is that many of the new tracks can be built in a way that takes advantage of them. Every track has its own traditional raceway, but also plenty of hidden pathways that talented and astute players can take advantage of. Many of these alternative routes include rail and wall grind sections that allow you to build up more speed while also offering up a shorter path to the finish line. They give players lagging behind a chance to catch up, or a talented player the opportunity to crush any hope, cementing themselves at the top by utilizing these paths. And my god, seriously, I encourage you to check out some of what the top players are able to achieve on these courses using the new mechanics. It provides evidence of how the new mechanics have pushed the series' movement forward. Anyway, part of the fun of every kart racer is discovering these alternate routes after first taking time to soak in the joy of new racetracks, and Mario Kart World is no exception. There's 30 tracks in World, but 2 of them feature alternate routes, making for a total of 32 if you want to be specific. Of these, 14 are returning classics, while 16 new courses have been introduced. But guess what? Like I said, I'm new to this franchise, so I got 30 new tracks. Except for Acorn Heights, I did remember that one. As with any kart racer, some tracks stand out more than others. Rainbow Road, Boo Cinema, Cheap Cheap Falls, and DK Spaceport were amongst my favorites for a combination of reasons. The stunning presentation of the series' most iconic track, the surprise moment of jumping through the movie screen, the rushing waters of the falls, and the amount of Nintendo love found all throughout Donkey Kong's level. That's not to say that other tracks weren't excellent as well, but everyone's gonna have their favorites, and those were mine. Especially the Spaceport, wow, they really nailed it, what an impressive track. More importantly, I appreciated that each track not only granted opportunity for higher levels of skill expression, but that some existed solely for newcomers to practice on. Koopa Troopa Beach and Mario Brothers Circuit, as well as Boo Cinema to a degree, provided simple tracks that allowed me to come to grip with the mechanics before moving on to some of the more intermediate and advanced tracks like Bowser's Castle, Wario's Shipyard, and Sky High Sundae, amongst others. This balance between different track difficulties was really appreciated, but it's hard to imagine many returning or advanced players spending time on these easier tracks. Still, their inclusion is a net positive for the experience, especially for me because, like I said, they're all brand new to me. Perhaps one of the best parts about each track was the inclusion of aha moments, set pieces of sorts where the player is given a fantastic view as they glide over the top of a track or are given a chance to build up a lot of speed, careening downwards back to the finish line. Approaching the giant question mark block high up in the clouds strikes you with awe, while coming off this ski slope is as exhilarating as the real thing. My personal favorite was probably the dinosaur theme park, where the T-Rex, the Brontosaurus, and the Triceratops can be used as ramps or imposed as obstacles on you. That was really fun. These spectacle moments remain prevalent in Mario Kart World, and they are appreciated as always. Of course, there's more to this game than just the tracks, as for the first time ever, the series has gone open world. I'll discuss this more when examining each of the game modes, explaining how it's relevant to that mode, but for now, let's establish it. Between the dips and dives of each track is a seamless open world that the player can freely traverse in free roam or explore more linearly in other modes. Highways, dirt roads, and paved pathways are like a connective tissue tying each of the tracks together, and are designed with a lot of care. They never overshadow any dedicated course, but they are full of obstacles and opportunities of their own. Grinding on the cables of a bridge pylon gives a great view and a speed boost, while traffic can help or hinder you. Crash into them and lose speed, but pay attention because one might be throwing out a boost mushroom or some food from Yoshi's Diner. Just make sure you don't get hit by one of the bombs. It's cool little touches like this that make the open world sections feel more alive and interesting to traverse. In this way, a lot of life has been breathed into these roadways, and while that's appreciated, I must say that it can often feel like you're seeing more of them than the tracks themselves, but more on that later. Speaking of Yoshi's Diner, he's the key to unlocking many of the game's alternate costumes. By speeding through his drive-thru and grabbing a bite to eat, racers might have a change in uniform, which unlocks it back on the main menu. Honestly, I really thought this was a cool way to handle unlocks so long as you aren't desperate to get them all immediately. With a bit of patience, it's rewarding to see a new random costume drop, and since you get Yoshi meals so often, you get the impression that new outfits are constantly dropping. Even after 20 hours, I was still unlocking new ones, and that was awesome. Unfortunately though, I'd argue that this is the best Mario Kart world is able to reward its players extrinsically. Out of all the unlockables, we have racers, costumes, vehicles, and stickers. Costumes are doled out at an appropriate frequency, but everything else is questionable. Starting with the racers, and I have to imagine that this is what most players will want to unlock the fastest. Many are available from the start, including the coveted new cow. My god, they really are getting desperate for new characters, aren't they? But you won't find many of the added skins found in 8's DLC, including any of the characters outside of Mario's universe. That's a bummer in its own right, but what makes matters worse is how you unlock the rest of the roster. 7 new characters are handed out simply by finishing races in the Grand Prix mode, which isn't bad, but some will elude you for a long time because they can only be obtained through the Comic power-up. Comic, I'm not sure how you say his name. If he glides over you, your character might transform so long as you're on a pre-selected course. This is really annoying as this power-up is already quite rare. Even as a newcomer, I can't recall getting this power-up on my own, but that's probably because it's saved for players towards the back of the race. At least I think so, and I'm just so talented. Jokes aside, even novices won't spend a lot of time at the back of the pack, meaning this thing won't spawn often. The kicker is, that might not even matter, as I believe you have to get hit with Comic's magic in order to transform. Therefore, you must rely on other players to use it on you, which is totally out of your control, meaning if you want all the characters, you must painstakingly grind or set up a fake race in local multiplayer and pray for Comic spawns. I don't know who thought this was a good idea. I understand that the characters that unlock from these aren't necessarily iconic characters, but locking off content behind this tedium does not encourage or deliver any fun for the player. It's not a huge deal on its own, but it stacks with other issues, compounding the annoyance. Next up, we have vehicles, which unlock in association with how many coins you collect. For every 100 you nab, you unlock a new cart, which caps at 3,000 coins. This isn't too bad, it's still a grind, but at least it doles out some rewards over time at a frequent rate, instead of front-loading them or hiding them behind tedium. But for me, the ultimate who gives a shit about this reward would be the stickers. By completing different tasks such as finishing Grand Prix Cups, or even just starting the game, the player is given stickers that they can equip to their carts. I struggle to even view these as a reward because they're such nothing prizes, like cheap little plastic toys given out at the arcade after you've given them all your money. A sticker is not a reward, especially when I'm not even going to notice it during the heat of a race. And to add injury to insult, you can't even place the sticker somewhere on your cart by hand, removing any chance for customization. I really struggle to view these as anything more than a hollow prize, something I never cared about once. So when it comes to rewarding its players, Mario Kart World struggles immensely to achieve this extrinsically. Racing well as an intrinsic reward will just have to carry the day. Alright, with all of that established, let's move on to the different game modes. Grand Prix, Knockout Tour, Free Roam, Time Trials, Versus, and Battle Mode. They range from mediocre to great in my opinion, but many of them lead towards the former, unfortunately. So let's start with Grand Prix. This classic mode sees racers earning points depending on their finishing positions across 4 different tracks. At the end, the racer with the most points is declared the winner. Any fan of kart racers will be familiar with this setup. I know I certainly was as a Crash Team Racing enthusiast. It's a tried and true racing setup that allows players to dominate or make great comebacks with precision driving and skill. Those positives are retained here in Mario Kart World, but I think 2 factors drag it down. Unlike in previous Mario Kart games, World has just that, an open world. In Grand Prix, you won't simply race each course for 3 laps to determine the winner. No, instead you must drive between the tracks using the connective tissue highways I mentioned earlier. On paper, this seems like an awesome idea. And to be honest, I think it is, but the implementation is misguided. If you're going to include an open world, it ought to be tied into as many game modes as possible, and so I'm glad it's a part of Grand Prix. Driving to the next course is amazing, and amongst other factors, helps to accomplish the central vision of this game. Mario Kart, but open world. However, again the problem is implementation. In Grand Prix, you'll start the cup by racing 3 times around the first track. After that's finished, you'll load in just off of that track and begin the second race where you travel to the next track. However, this part of the journey, when you're not on the race courses themselves, is included in the lap markers, meaning that when you do arrive at the next actual course, you only go around it once before that race ends. To me, this is a colossal mistake, as it goes too far in promoting the open world and comes at the detriment of the incredibly well-made courses that are the pinnacle of this game. The open world sections ought to enhance the racing spirit, not rob the existing tracks of their prowess. As it is, tracks in Grand Prix, outside of the starting one, feel like afterthoughts, equivalent to the open world highways instead of as lords over them, as they should be. Once you arrive, you only get to do 1 lap around them before it's over, and that's a shame. It's impressive how seamless the transition is between open world and track, but tracks need their time in the spotlight. And what kills me is that the solution seems so obvious. Just include 2 extra laps on the track once you arrive. Allow the racers to still travel between them, but once they get there, don't de-emphasize the track with 1 quick lap. No, give them the full experience, allowing players to go around it in the traditional 3-lap structure. Yes, this would balloon up the time of Grand Prix, but only by a few minutes, and I think the trade-off is well worth it. As a newcomer, I wanted to see the tracks as quickly as possible, and I started with the game mode promoted first, Grand Prix. I was disappointed then to just get a small serving of the courses instead of enjoying them in all their glory. That's my main issue with Grand Prix, but I also wanted to highlight a lesser problem I noticed here, the lack of difficulty. The difficulty options here are 50, 100, and 150cc. The higher the number, the faster the karts go, and the more challenging the AI is. In Mario Kart 8, racers could also choose 200cc for a really tough challenge. That difficulty option simply is not found in Mario Kart World, and I cannot fathom why. As it is now, I was able to get first place in every Grand Prix playing on 150cc within 2 tries. And remember, I am, for all intensive purposes, a brand new player. After getting gold in all of them, I have no real reason to ever play them again outside of mere entertainment, which is fine, but an extra hard mode would have been appreciated. Moving on to what ends up being Mario Kart World's most notable new addition, and yes, free roam mode, you ought to be ashamed of me saying that, is Knockout Tour. In this mode, players attempt to stay alive in the race by finishing in a high enough position during 1 consecutive race. Each leg of the race weeds out players who aren't high enough in the standings, while those who did continue to race. This occurs in groupings of 4 until only 4 players remain, who then race out a single lap on one of the tracks to find the ultimate winner. This game includes 7 different circuits, and each of them lasts about 10 minutes, which is a noticeable increase from the 3 minutes or so it takes to complete 3 laps on any given track. Thus, the game sort of advertises Knockout Tour as being more of an endurance test versus races with set laps. These are a lot of fun, I have to admit it, even against the AI that seems more challenging here than in the Grand Prix mode. Don't get me wrong, I never was eliminated before the final leg of the race, but finishing in first place often proved a struggle. I imagine playing this mode with friends or against strangers online is a chaotic blast, but that's owed more to the structure than anything else. One of Mario Kart World's new introductions to the series is races that feature 24 drivers, and to be honest, I didn't feel that either improved or worsened my experience. I'm certain that's not true when playing online, as extra people means a lot more variance in what items people get and when they use them. However, in single player, this isn't felt very much, only a little bit at the beginning of the race as you jockey for position. And that lack of impact is felt more in Knockout Tour obviously because there's less racers as the drive continues. Just like in Grand Prix, Knockout Tour will see players traveling along the overworld, again de-emphasizing the greatness of the course design. However, my biggest problem with Knockout Tour stems from the game's item system. Let's be real, all of these party-style games from Nintendo include a layer of randomness to try to shake things up, to ensure that the most skilled players aren't always guaranteed to win. You see it in Mario Party a lot, but it's also felt in Mario Kart because of the game's items that can turn the tide of a race. Item distribution isn't hard to understand. Players farther back in the race get better items like blue shells, bullet bills, and lightning bolts, while those closer to the front get less helpful items like coins and banana peels. This provides players closer to last place with an opportunity for a comeback, and I do think that's necessary in any racing game to mitigate the skill gap a touch. However, it can also be a bit overkill at times, and it's felt most in Knockout Tour. I've seen those who enjoy multiplayer complaining a lot about this too, but even I felt it in single player. You'll be cruising along, just about to finish the race in a top 3 position, maybe even first, and you get hit with an item right before the finish line, such as a normal or blue shell, and you end up losing your higher position. In Grand Prix, this is frustrating, but surmountable, as there will be other opportunities to earn those points back in subsequent races. But in Knockout Tour, it is infuriating. As I said, this mode is supposed to be an endurance test, races lasting upwards of 10 minutes or longer, and when you invest that time and feel like you're in control of the race, only to be denied in the last 5 to 10 seconds is extremely disheartening. It's like taking a test and finding out only the last question counted towards your grade, and you bombed it. All that time spent solving the other problems is forfeited as a waste, and you don't end up with the grade you felt you had earned. That's how it can feel in Knockout Tour. It's almost like the AI is cheating against you to ensure you don't finish in first place most of the time. But the reality is that with only 4 players left at the end, those in second, third, and fourth are still getting those ultra powerful items like bullet bills, lightning bolts, and blue shells, especially that driver in last. They then use those to win the race at the very last second, which doesn't reflect skillful driving, but instead it's taking advantage of imbalanced item distribution. That to me is a mistake, and it is soul crushing. Unless you have a large lead, you probably are going to lose if you get hit with an item. My goal was to get gold in every Grand Prix and every Knockout Tour, but the desire to do so in the latter is really fading, because why should I invest 10-minute chunks of my time to likely lose in the last few seconds because an AI racer randomly hits me with a brown shell? I understand this is a consequence of their design philosophy to mitigate skill gaps to ensure every player has a chance, but in single player, I should be the only one that matters. The AI isn't going to feel a sense of achievement, only I can do that. Now, I'm not saying I don't want any challenge, I feel like I've established that in the section on the Grand Prix, but this sort of difficulty that you find here in Knockout Tour is tedious, random, and annoying, instead of being a challenge that pushes my skills. For these reasons, I think Knockout Tour can be a lot of fun, but also a real drag if you are getting unlucky in a series of races where the computer dunks on you at the last second out of nowhere, and you finish in last. By far though, the main reason I can't in good faith say that Mario Kart World is worth $80 is because the game's most promising new mode, Free Roam, feels underbaked. I want to start by sharing what's available in Free Roam, but also discussing what I think should have been added to take this mode to greatness. In Free Roam, you can drive around the map at your leisure, doing mostly one of three things. The first would be just having a chill space to drive around and to experiment with the mechanics. If you're like me, you like having a game where you can just veg out for a little bit, something simple to play while listening to a podcast, for example. You know, just sort of relaxing. This open world fits perfectly for that, but for me personally, that's not worth a price raise alone, it's an added bonus. The second thing you can do is explore the map for secrets, of which there are a few. The most notable to me would be the mirror mode that can be unlocked through a Mario 64 reference alongside a completed checklist of tasks. This is cool, but many of the other secrets are more Easter eggs than anything else, loving nods to Nintendo's world building. Essentially, they are cool moments that you stumble into and think, oh neat, before promptly driving away and forgetting about them a few minutes later. Again, things that should be an added bonus. Then of course you have the main objective of Free Roam, which is gathering all the collectibles, including the costumes, but also 3 distinct classes of items: Peach Coins, P-Switches, and question mark blocks. Peach Coins are often tucked away in a little pocket of the map or displayed prominently in hard-to-reach locations, prompting the player to think about their surroundings and the mechanics and formulate a plan of action to secure them. Question mark blocks give you stickers and not much more. And finally, P-Switches are the most robust collectible, as they offer up mini challenges for the player to complete. This includes parkour obstacle courses, races against NPCs, and a few miscellaneous other things. These are fun, momentary distractions, but not much more. So, all in all, these collectibles and missions are fine, but they don't feel very engaging. It's like if Breath of the Wild only had Korok seeds. No shrines, no story, nothing that cool to find out in the world, just Korok seeds. I don't know about you, but to me, that sounds abysmal and uninteresting. Fun maybe for a while, but grating in the long run. That's how my experience was with Free Roam mode, mostly bored after an hour of roaming around. A way to kill some time, and not much more than that. To make matters worse, odd design choices also rob the fun. For example, there's no easy way to get a sense of direction because the map is so undetailed and there's no North Star on your minimap. Also, there's no simple way to track what P-Switches you found and which you haven't. You'll never truly know how many more are out there without using a guide online, and you also won't have a useful map to show you where to find them. Without a guide, you will spend monotonous hours roaming around attempting to find the last handful if you play as a completionist. And if you aren't a completionist, this mode doesn't really offer up anything else. Some subpar entertainment, and that is a humongous missed opportunity. Everything I described would be viewed as wonderful additions to an open world story mode akin to Crash Team Racing, my favorite racer of all time. If I were to come up with a way to justify the $80 price of admission on top of the cost of buying a Switch 2, that would be the best path forward, a dedicated story mode. To me, it would capitalize on the open world premise by allowing the player to travel from track to track, venturing through this lovingly crafted world as they earn trophies for finishing races in first place. Merging the Grand Prix into this sort of adventure could have been an option as well. Say you pick a racer at the beginning of the story, and you have to win all 8 cups, sort of like Pokemon's gym badges, to become the racing champion of the world. And a simple Mario story could have been included on top to really give the game a narrative structure. Something simple like saving Princess Peach or stopping Bowser, whatever you want to go with. It didn't need to be complicated, it just needed to be something of value, something that takes advantage of the open world concept instead of half-assing it, providing an open world with actual meaningful and trackable gameplay and narrative objectives. Instead, they designed this spectacular open world, threw in many Korok Seed-esque challenges, and called it a day. Like I said, it's a total missed opportunity, and it's a shame too, because the open world really is this game's largest point of differentiation from the other Mario Karts. But unfortunately, they just didn't capitalize fully on the premise. Luckily, time trials is partially what I wanted from this experience. An opportunity to push my skills further through knowledge of the track designs and the racing mechanics. Unlike anything else, time trials feels like an objectively trackable and fair challenge that helps teach the player everything they need to know to master the game. In it, players can race against the track either with or without a ghost to compare their performance against. When playing solo, it's fun to get the best time you can, but the ghost adds so much to the experience. From racing against your previous best times, or going toe-to-toe with a game developer at Nintendo who absolutely blazes the track. These latter races are amazing, as you can learn a lot about the tracks, particularly shortcuts and moves that allow for faster completion times. And without items to get in the way, it's really just you versus the game, no randomization at play. And I love that. By far, one of the most enjoyable experiences I had with Mario Kart World single player were these time trials. They not only forced me to get better at drifting and the new mechanics, but also made me think deeper about the stats of racers and karts. You see, every racer is of a different weight class, with lighter drivers having faster acceleration but slower overall speed, and heavier drivers being the opposite. Other factors such as weight and handling are also influenced by combining racers with karts. It was important then to consider not only the track itself, but also the racer and vehicle that I brought to the map. Some tracks featured more straightaways, and that favored the heavier and faster races, while tracks with more twists and turns demanded me to use lighter characters to take the lead against tough ghosts. More than any other mode, time trials got me to understand this game better and to improve my skills, which was awesome. Finally, we have 2 other modes available in single player, Versus and Battle. I'm gonna go over these quick because I don't think they're that important. Versus is an appreciated mode that actually allows the player to race on the tracks themselves instead of having to travel between them. Of course, that option is still there if you want it, but it's nice to use this mode to become more familiar with the tracks in a race setting. Whenever I feel like experiencing one of the awesome new tracks again, I just jump into this mode and do a few laps, and it's pure fun. And finally, Battle Mode is fine. Whenever I stumble across one of these types of modes in a kart racer, I always feel like it's a nice but underwhelming inclusion, a tacked-on mode in case you want to switch things up. It's clearly meant to be played with friends more so than the computer, and that's evident after going just a few rounds in the 2 game types. Balloon Battle sees you using items to pop other racers' balloons before losing all 5 of your own. After a set number of rounds, whoever has the most points wins. It's at least marginally interesting, unlike Coin Runners, which sees you driving around and picking up as many coins as possible, damaging other racers to steal their coins. It's a drag if I'm honest, but again, not really intended for single player. Finally, let's briefly talk about presentation and performance, which is notable here, given it's the debut game for the Nintendo Switch 2. As a side note, I've been really happy with my Switch 2 so far, both in handheld mode and on my TV. The bigger screen is a nice upgrade and has some real weight. It looks good, but it's a shame they didn't put an OLED screen on it yet. And since the system has more power, it finally gives me hope that upcoming Pokemon games won't look and run like complete ass. But time will tell on that. Anyway, back to Mario Kart World. and it's great. I was constantly getting the 60 FPS that the game aimed to deliver, so again, thank you Switch 2. Besides that, the game looks spectacular. I really love that they leaned into the cartoonish side just a bit more versus Mario Kart 8. Whether it's on the tracks themselves or traveling the open world, a lot of Nintendo love has been crammed in, small things that will get longtime fans to smile. Whether it's the onlookers watching you race, vehicles spitting out mushrooms, bombs, and coins, or just seeing iconic Mario creatures moving through fields and cities. A lot of love went into this game, and it looks good, again, leaning mostly into the cartoonish nature. I have to believe the Switch 2 is capable of putting out better looking games with more realistic features, but for a Mario game, what we got here is great. And thankfully, the game runs very well, which is critical in a kart racer that's full of micro decisions from second to second. Overall, I think it's a great game to slowly unveil what the Switch 2 is capable of, and I expect even better things to come as more and more games release. Mario Kart World is in an interesting position when it comes to reviewing it as a product and critiquing it as a game because it both succeeds and fails in equal measure. It's a success because it truly does push the skill ceiling higher for players who have mastered 8's driving because of the new mechanics, like the wall and rail riding, and how it opens up opportunities for extreme shortcuts. Knockout Tour is a fun new addition, and it's alongside of other returning favorites. This Switch 2 launch title also offers up something new for the series, an open world, and driving through the artery dirt roads and nerve highways of this world to reach the main track organs is an awesome concept. It feels like a natural direction to take the series in, and it partially succeeds. Unfortunately, that's where some of the doubt creeps in, as the open world concept is not taken far enough. Free roam, despite having a lot of content to do, feels like a tacked on addition simply because there is no overarching objective to tie together its miscellaneous elements. Completing P-Switch missions and finding collectibles would have been great if they were additions on top of a meaty story mode, but unfortunately we don't get that, and without it, the world felt hollow and lacking outside of the Nintendo charm. Other small problems plagued the rest of the game modes, especially item distribution in Knockout Tour and a lack of difficulty in the Grand Prix. But ultimately, the biggest problem with Mario Kart World is the price. $80 represents a price hike not only for this game, but for many other games moving forward, and I think Mario Kart World and Nintendo deserve a little pushback for this change to the industry. Again, multiplayer may add on hours and hours of enjoyment, and I guess that's their justification for the price increase, but nothing in the single player helps to justify that cost. In my mind, multiplayer was already a great success for this series, even at the cheaper price points, and so this game needed something more in the single player content to elevate it, and that is just not here. Trust me, I've looked. I spent hours and hours exploring the other game modes to try to find something, anything, and I just didn't. For that reason, it's hard to recommend Mario Kart World outright, although its success seems all but guaranteed given how strong the Switch 2 has sold out of the gate. It's not surprising to see a publisher pull a move like this over a surefire hit, a game that seems too good to pass up. And so it's a great business decision for Nintendo, but ultimately it's a slap in the face for their biggest fans. There's fun to be had on the circuit, but don't stand too close, or you might just get run over. Thanks for watching. Alright everyone, I hope you enjoyed this look at Mario Kart World. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the game, specifically your takes on the price increase and whether or not this game justifies it. Like I said, for some the price is justified, for others it won't be. I lean on the it won't be side. With this title out of the way, I'll be turning my focus to Death Stranding 2, which I am super excited about. I love the original. Check out my brief reflection that I released a little while ago if you haven't seen that yet. But I'm also getting the itch to revisit an old franchise, so a long format video on Spyro 2 Ripto's Rage may be coming in the future. It just kind of depends on how well I'm able to manage 2 large projects, because I know Death Stranding 2 will be huge, and I don't want to half-ass the Spyro 2 video because I really love that game. It's one of my top 10 favorite games of all time. So we're just going to have to see how it goes. I don't want to half-ass either project, so I'll do my best. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Please leave a like if you enjoyed the video. Consider subscribing for more. Check out my donation pages in the comments below. Follow me on Twitter at NopNapNarp. And as always, have a nice day and take care.